Ricky.
Guess what?
What?
We are
Live from SABCS. The doctor is in.
By way of your farm. So we're really not in San Antonio, but we are at Mo's house.
We are. So we're coming to you live actually from Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Where we are attending the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium virtually. And we have an amazing show for you. We have some friends who are here at the table with us.
Our friends.
Oh, Melissa Berry, the cancer fashionista.
The cancer
you guys. It's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We have Haley Dierman, who is the CEO of the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation.
So great to be here in person.
Yes.
For a change, it's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. So, we've all teamed up, Touch and Cancer Fashionista and TNBC Foundation, to bring you SABCS to your house. And, there are a lot of issues about traveling. San Antonio has a lot of political stuff going on with the Texas issues. And so we all kind of decided not to go. But we're here, and we're bringing you all the great content. So we just wanted to get together live, right?
Absolutely.
And talk about this, this week and what's going on and all the new change, all the new information, and even what is SABCS. So why don't we even start there?
Exactly. It's funny. We were, kind of pre-gaming before we did this live, and I have never been to SABCS, and I was just telling Dr. Mo that I didn't even know that it was offered to patients. I thought it was just for doctors.
Yeah. Actually, San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium was established, and the very first one was November 11th, 1978.
Wow.
And it was established for the education of the public and professionals on the latest happenings in breast cancer research.
Wow.
So we're hopeful to put the public back in the party today, because I think
I love that.
over the years, the symposium's gotten more and more scientific. The physicians all show up, but where are the patients? Where are the advocates?
Yeah.
Where are the people who can translate some of this language and some of this great research that's going on? And so, it becomes all of us.
All of us.
Absolutely.
We become the trusted
We're the
advisors.
voice.
And we're always talking about how to be your own advocate. So
Right.
this is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And even when, I have been to San Antonio Breast Symposium, and it's crazy. You're running all over the place. There's multiple things happening every minute in different venues. There's a lot of Marriotts.
Yep.
Let's start there. Though. Like we're all going to go, but I want you to tell us your very first experience at San Antonio. Tell us what that was like.
I followed Haley around. The first one I went
remember.
to, Haley had me like in tow, like literally holding my hand. Come on, we got to go over there. Come on, we got to be over here. And we ran all over the conference, and we were constantly looking at our agenda to figure out where we should go next. We would try to plan our days, but there's so much content that you want to see, and literally there's a breakfast, there's a luncheon, there's a dinner, and then all the meetings in between, and then we're meeting with our pharmaceutical partners.
Yep.
So it's a crazy, crazy schedule, and it's hard even when you're there to absorb the information. And actually, so the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation, the first time I went was when you did like our medical symposium.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Haley can describe this, but I felt like I was at a ping pong game, because it was like a room full of these brainiac doctors talking about the latest triple negative breast cancer research. And I was like, what? I had no idea what they were talking about. It was all over my head, but they were having this intense conversation trying to save the world.
Wow.
And we do this like all the time.
I love this so much. If you're just joining us, we are live from the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium, SABCS. We are coming virtual all the way from Pennsylvania, from my farm, and we're live on several platforms today.
Yeah.
So where are we live? Who's showing us, and where can people find us?
You can find us on blackdoctor.org, through Facebook, on Touch the Black Breast Cancer Alliance, also on Facebook. TNBC Foundation, Cancer Fashionista, and if anyone misses us live, they can still find us on tnbcfoundation.org. We have a link through SABCS TV to basically all of our programming, which is great.
So we're like Visa. We're like everywhere you want to be.
Right.
And we're coming to you live once again. If you're just joining us from
within arm's reach of everybody.
Exactly. And
right
we get
here.
to be all together. It's so glorious.
Yes.
But we're talking about this huge conference in San Antonio where all of the latest hot new breaking topics happen. And it's called the SABCS, San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium. So Haley, tell us about your very first one.
God, it was, I think, in 2006. And the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation decided to convene a meeting where we would invite all the leading researchers from around the world to sit down together and talk about the latest avenues for future research in the triple negative space, like specifically for triple negative. And I remember going in there, and it was just the most overwhelming experience. I knew I was going to have to interact with all these doctors, and
they're so smart.
I know, and I was so intimidated, and I
Right.
didn't know the names of the drugs. Why are the drug names
So
so
hard.
complicated?
I know.
And I remember going on YouTube and listening to doctor interviews and like practicing the pronunciation of like the drug names so I wouldn't look stupid when I spoke to the doctors. But that was my first experience, and I remember walking in and, you know, going to the poster presentations. You can talk about what that is a little bit
what
later.
a poster is.
And all of the, you know, the medical presentations, and so much of the information was just like way
Right,
over my
right.
head. And so, you know, for future meetings, we decided to bring in, you know, medical writers, people who could translate that information, who could sit in on these, you know, really technical presentations, and then take that information and make it easily accessible to like the average patient,
Right.
survivor,
Talk to me like I'm a
caregiver.
5-year-old.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
Boil
we
it
don't
down to the simplest
understand.
terms.
And that made all the difference. And so for years, you know, every year since, we would bring a scientific, you know, writer with us and basically blog about
I
it.
love that.
And
Yep.
for our community, so that they could know what, you know, what this new research is. And for me, like, I think every year, like in the beginning, I would always think, okay, December is coming and it's the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium. Maybe this year we'll find that magic bullet,
Right,
right?
that magic
that
cure.
that
Right.
cure
Yeah,
to
yeah.
triple negative breast cancer. And you know, I'm not, you know, as naive anymore. I realize that, you know, the progress happens in smaller, you know, smaller bites. Basically, you have to keep, you know, getting at it. And I realize how much progress when I think back
It's true.
to 2006 versus now. We've made so much progress.
Yeah.
And
we now
I
have
learned
some
about all of it
therapies.
at SABCS.
Well,
great.
let's piggyback off that, and let me ask you, Melissa, did you understand before you got into this work that cancer is one word but many diseases, and how
Right.
discoveries are made, and why the science seems sometimes so slow? Did you understand that? Because I don't think most
Absolutely not. I think I was diagnosed and I was told you have triple negative breast cancer. And first of all, I didn't know that there were different types of breast cancer. So
Who
we'll
did?
start
Who
right
would,
there.
Right? Right. How would you know?
So I really, you know, coming from a patient perspective, and I'm an 8-year triple negative breast cancer thriver, I really didn't understand the complexity of the word cancer or even breast cancer until I was actually diagnosed.
Wow. Yeah.
But who would, right? How would you know?
Until
How
yeah,
would you
you,
know? I mean, I
until
didn't
you
either.
have to know unless you're a
Right.
doctor.
It's
Right.
true, and we use this one word to explain everything.
Right.
Right? Like, and cancer, the reason why the discoveries are so slow is because cancer is very cunning. It finds a way to evade all of the ways that a cell should die. Every cell should be programmed at some point to stop growing, right? And there's all these different ways and back doors and secret passageways, and it's like a labyrinth where cancer cells decide that they're going to live and they're going to reproduce and they're going to live forever. And they just keep doing it. And we find one mechanism, and we find a drug and a target for it, and we start treating there. And all of a sudden, the cancer says, "Oh, well, we've got another way.
Right. We'll find another
Look,
angle."
we can go through the bookcase, and now next thing you know, there's a
Right,
new
right.
passageway, and cancer cells learn to evade the drugs. And so it's really challenging because people will often say, "Oh, the medical community, they've got a cure for cancer. They're just holding on to it. They're just dragging it out." I promise you, we are not. I mean, I wish we would put me out of a job and I could just be a farmer full time. But, you know, this symposium is all of the researchers
Right.
store up their research, right? And it's kind of like the prom, or it's like the big event. It's like the Super Bowl.
14,000 people come.
Super Bowl
Yep.
of cancer research. And the very first time I went, and even as a surgeon, as a practicing surgeon, I felt completely intimidated by this. I know a lot.
And you're a you're a medical
professional, right.
Yeah, exactly.
And
You
I know a
understand the
lot of
science.
surgeons
Yeah.
who don't go to this conference because they feel just like you feel, and like you feel, and like you feel.
It's intimidating.
It's huge. It's a giant block-long symposium of posters and sessions, auditorium after auditorium after auditorium of drug names that you can't pronounce, of trials,
Yes.
of data, slides full of scientific and numeric data. And that can be a little bit overwhelming, but over the years, I've watched this symposium become more friendly to surgeons, become more friendly to radiation oncologists or doctors who treat cancer with x-rays, become more friendly to advocates, and even beyond just friendly to advocates, meaning having posters and sessions and welcome events to advocates. I think the next phase is that advocates are actually getting involved in the research, in the presentations, in the trials. So let's talk about that. Like, what's going on there? This exploded.
It is. Well, I think also, let's explain what a poster is first.
Okay.
So they have these, like, you walk into this room that's a convention hall, and it's like this massive room, and there's hundreds of scientists presenting what they have as a poster. And basically, it's like a poster board that you made in high school of your science project. But it's like the type is really small, so they can get a lot of information. But they're showcasing their specific study that could be to what we think is like a tiny small thing could be a huge advance in the science.
I'll jump in here and I'll say I have a poster at San Antonio right now.
Right.
And it's on a giant poster board that's about the size of a wall or about the size of this table that we're sitting at. I don't know if we can pan out and show the full size of this table, but it spans from one end of the room to the other end of the room. And even the title is intimidating, right? So the title of this poster, and I'm looking at my phone here because I don't remember it all. Integration of an ancestry inclusive polygenic risk score with the Tyrer-Cuzick breast cancer risk model. Say that 5 times fast.
That's why we're all intimidated when we
Say
go into
that
the room.
And if you look at the pictures here, oh my gosh.
Right,
it's
and there's a
charts
bunch of
graphs.
charts, and the font's really, really tiny. And basically, it's a poster that looks at how we can include scores of people's individual genes. We can now quantify, because years ago, we would look at a person's genes that they were born with, their heredity, right? So not just the genes in your tumor, but the genes you were born with, are you BRCA positive, etc. And we could tell how likely you were to get cancer based on those genes. But those studies were only tested on people of Eastern European descent. And so all the tests that we use to tell who has a mutation in the BRCA genes, who has a mutation in PALB2, P53, like our breast do, all of the studies and the science behind it was developed on white women from Eastern Europe.
Right.
And so how could you say that this is valid for an Asian Indian population or an Asian population from Asia or an African American population or someone from African or Caribbean descent? We couldn't. And so we looked at 145,000 different patients, and we looked at their genes and the little portions of their genes, and we were able to test this risk score and tell that it works in Black women, it works in Asian women, it works in white women here in the U.S. And wherever your ancestry is from, these are now good tests to use because they've been studied on
people of color and Black women. That's awesome. Yeah. So you're showcasing that story.
That's amazing.
Right. Amazing. And the scientists are there to kind of explain it. So we're doing this virtually now, and you can even go on the SABCS website to see some of the posters. But I think that what we're learning, though, is what it tells me is what you said, Mo. Cancer is so complicated, and despite, since 1978, this has been happening. Think about all the research, money being spent, and scientists working to get to where we are now, which is like we still have a lot of work to do, and we're starting now to see that work among Black women, but not enough. Not enough. And our mantra is to get more Black women into clinical research so that we can be a part of these studies. And so hopefully we'll see some more of that this week. But
and thanks to all the great work that you're doing with Touch. I mean, it's amazing.
We're trying to we're launching our movements, and that's a whole other thing. But it starts here, though. It starts with the science, and that's what we're missing. So, I totally applaud the science. So.
As someone who's been going since 2006, I see so much progress and such a big difference. I mean,
have you seen, like, it's not
it's
massive.
It's growing.
It's
growing.
incremental.
I mean, there was I mean, when we first started, there was really nothing there on triple negative, for
Right,
example.
Right, and that's even why you started the foundation.
Exactly,
Right, right.
and now there are so many sessions, so many poster presentations. There was nothing that I recall from 2006 or 2007 specific to Black women with breast cancer of any
Right,
kind.
of any kind,
You know,
right.
there was,
Right.
one, I think Lisa Carey had one major study, and that was published at SABCS, but I don't remember much more. Now,
Right.
I see so many sessions devoted to that, and I think it's amazing. I think also that one of the things I loved about the poster presentations is just like you kind of lit up when you were talking about your research and your poster. That's what you get from going to
Right.
SABCS
You get
Live.
that
You get to
excitement.
talk to the researchers who are so passionate about what they're doing, and you hear from them their backstories. Everyone's doing this for a reason.
Right.
Someone lost,
Yeah.
a
Somebody,
family
yeah.
member, a
Wow.
close
Right.
friend, and it's their life's work. It's their passion,
Yeah.
and you really get to see that when you
You
talk
do.
to
And
them.
when you talk to them and you're a survivor, they hug you. I mean,
Yes.
I
Wow.
get so many hugs because they don't really get to interact with patients.
Yes.
You know,
Right, it's
so-
reciprocal, right?
Right. So
Right.
they're so excited to meet us
Wow.
to see that you're
Sure.
doing well and you're thriving. And they ask, okay, what did you do? What treatment did you do? What did you know? What's your cancer all about? So they can really understand. It makes their work real.
It-
You know,
it's-
gives
it's
a reality
true.
check.
A tumor is millions and millions of cells.
Yeah.
And the work that these researchers do in the laboratory looks at one cell, two cells. It'll take one cell and divide the genes in a single cell. It's like a molecule of air, right? And so to meet a person who's been impacted
Right,
by
right.
this, and to see how they might have how what we do might affect and maybe help a
Right.
patient, or even more when we look at the results of clinical trials. So a lot of the symposiums or the podium talks, or the meetings where people sit in the auditorium and then there's a speaker at the podium, they're presenting the research from clinical trials. And so for the advocates, for the patients who are watching, you may have been in that clinical trial.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at the result of
Of that
your
work.
of
your
that work,
contribution,
but of
yeah.
your time,
Right.
of your tissue,
Right,
of
of
your
your
nights,
body.
of your
Yeah.
going to this cancer center, of your filling out those surveys, like all of that.
Right.
You're in there.
Yeah.
And it's not for nothing. It starts to all make sense as a sort of, we call it an ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
But you start to see where you fit into the cancer ecosystem.
Yeah.
What I love about it is that, I got my first exposure. I met mentors at these symposiums.
Right.
Because they like to send the trainees and the students and the residents
Right.
and the people who need to learn how to communicate scientific information, and people who need to network. And so they always send the residents and the students, and it's a beautiful thing because they're still on fire. They're not jaded. They're not 30, 40 years into this. They're new.
They're new and they're hoping to find a
and
cure.
they're hoping to find a cure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what
So
everyone is
nothing.
there for. Everyone is trying to find out what is everyone else doing. How
Right.
can we collaborate? How can we move the needle? And save lives. That's
Sure.
really what they're all
Right.
there.
And that's
for.
why we felt it was so important, even though we couldn't all be actually in San Antonio, to band together and have this conversation. And I also just wanted to mention, for everyone that's tuning in, feel free to drop. We have our phones up,
we do.
not
Yes.
because we're looking at other things, but if anybody would like to ask a question of
Or
any of
watching the
us
comment.
about
Yeah.
We're
SABCS, or any question you have about any recent studies that you're interested in knowing more about,
Yeah.
we are here to answer your questions.
And there's a lot of activity around triple negative this
Yes.
year. There's also a lot of conversations about trust and trust in healthcare.
Tell me more.
And there was a session yesterday afternoon about just trust in clinical trials and the whole the taking away some of the fear about it.
Sure.
And how do you trust your doctor? Can you trust the studies? Can you trust? But again, it means you have to trust people to actually participate and get the data that we need. You
So
know?
this is interesting because I think in years prior, we would see maybe a welcome session for
Yeah.
survivors, for advocates, for advocacy groups. You wouldn't see whole research, devoted to understanding how advocacy can improve. Right. And how to utilize it as a tool and as a partner. It was always sort of that's great thing you do on the side. Oh, you raise money for research and, you help people along in their lives. But this is like a call to the table, right? You
It
guys
is.
really have a seat at the table to help design trials,
Right.
to give presentations, to talk about the issues that impact the patients themselves. And I think I love that fact that we're now really opening the doors in terms of cancer research. It's not all about the drug trials, although the drugs are important. But you of all people, Melissa, like it's more than just the drugs, right? Like people are struggling in their everyday lives.
Absolutely. I mean, even just, to be able to have information about how to, if they're having issues with getting through the day, the fact that the treatment is such, it creates such a hardship for, work or to socialize. So, looking at the whole woman, I mean, it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. Because we realize that, the treatments are great, but if people can't tolerate them. So I'm looking at the schedule. Ricky showed me the schedule. And, looking at some of these talks, they're about anti-estrogen therapy. So estrogen blockers, for example. And women who take those estrogen blockers have a lot of joint pain, a lot of quality of life issues. Yep. There's a lot of issues with compliance. And so some people don't know if they want to take it or not. They're, triple negative, you don't get a pill to prevent your recurrence, right? This is the one cancer, as you like to say, that doesn't have a pill to prevent recurrence.
Right, no targeted therapy.
No targeted therapy, but the people who are on a targeted therapy, the people who are blocking their estrogen are struggling. Their vaginas are dry, their joints are achy, their hair is thinning, they're, and they're really having a tough time managing. And so there's sessions even on how do we increase compliance? How can we tell whose cancers are going to come back
Right, because this is what I speak to, women every day about, is there's the life-saving treatment, and then there's quality of life. Yeah. Everything from, sex to, being able to socialize, to fighting depression.
Yeah.
The list goes on. Being able to just go to the gym or
just
do yoga.
Feeling good about yourself,
exactly.
Feeling good.
Yeah.
So I actually, one of the things that I saw yesterday, and I think there's more of it later in the week, was two different studies on triple negative. One was about looking at estrogen, and estrogen usually feeds a cancer, but they've identified that, and I can't speak to the science as well as I probably should be able to, but there's an alpha and a beta estrogen, and they're finding the alpha is not good for you, but the beta estrogen now is being researched as a possible treatment.
Wow.
For TNBC.
And it makes sense because we know that younger women are diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, right? And what is it that feeds cell growth in younger women if not estrogen?
Right.
So is there something that we're missing? Is there maybe we don't have the right test to detect the type of estrogen that they're producing, or maybe that there's something that's missing in that research. So even BRCA 1 and 2 patients, right? They tend to be younger. They tend to be triple negative.
Right.
But doing an oophorectomy somehow seems to maybe help, right?
I had a prophylactic oophorectomy, and I still got breast cancer.
Tell them what an oophorectomy is.
I had my ovaries removed when I was, I'm 50 now, but when my oncologist told me, because I tested positive for the BRCA1 gene, that I remember specifically, he said, by the time you're 40, Melissa, I would like you to have your ovaries removed. And I thought, well, that's not going to be my 40th birthday present. So I did it when I was 39, and it was rough. I mean, surgical menopause is like, it's just a huge impact all around, and certainly nothing that I was prepared for. But I thought, anything so I don't have breast cancer. And then, I, of course, was very angry when I still was diagnosed with breast cancer just a couple of years later.
Yeah. And so I think there's still so much that we don't understand, and it's just not fair. And it's so, while we know that there are healthcare disparities, there are inequities. There's inequities in research and representation and how the disease manifests in our bodies and why we get diagnosed younger or sooner or more aggressive. It is a disease that affects and impacts everyone. And so seeing the inclusivity at these meetings, when I look and see Fumio Lapati have a whole keynote address talking about understanding the genome and the details of a tumor and the details in the genome of a person before they get a cancer, right? Can we detect before, just from your risk, from your family history, from your mutation? Can we predict how aggressive we need to be with your screening?
Yeah, and she's an amazing doctor in Chicago.
She's incredible, absolutely.
Yeah.
Looking at Lori Wilson, who's our friend and our bestie.
Yeah, and she's on our medical advisory board.
She's on our medical advisory board, and she's now leading a discussion. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things that's happening at this conference also, because for so long we'd go and all the scientists look like, Colonel Sanders, right? And let's be honest, they're all white, they're all male, they're all older, and we never
Right.
get a chance to hear from the young people who are on fire and from the diverse group of researchers and their lived experience. So
happening now.
it is, and I'm excited about that. And I think there's still some areas that we can grow. So Haley, where would you like to see this conference go next? What do you think would speak to your TNBC followers, the people that are watching right now?
I think that, I mean, I really feel like it's going in the right direction because, as you said in the beginning, maybe it was intended as something of public education as well, but
Right.
it didn't really
Didn't
serve
go
that
that way,
purpose.
no.
And then, over the years, certain groups have given grants, travel grants, for example, to survivors, to patients to come and participate in the conference. I think that was, so important because, as you said, when you meet with a researcher, they're hugging you. They're so
They're so
happy
happy
to
to
interact
see you.
with the
Yeah.
people that they're
They're
trying to
working
serve.
on it.
Makes it
right?
real.
I know.
Yeah.
So I think that I'd like to see more of that. It's definitely a huge improvement over the past, but that kind of interaction between the doctors, the researchers, advocates, and patients, I think is just critical because it puts a face to the diseases.
It
right?
does. It does.
It's easy to kind of lose sight of, why is quality of life important when we're coming up with these,
Yeah.
protocols for a clinical trial? This might work. So let's have them come into the office 4 times a week, for
Right.
example.
Right.
Not thinking,
That
of
they
the
have
fact
they
that,
have a life.
a lot of
It's
these women
true.
are younger. They have to
Right.
go to
They have
pick
to
up
go to
and
work.
drop off,
Right. They
for
take
school.
their kids. Right.
Very true.
Right.
But when
Yeah.
when you are meeting with these patients, when you're talking to advocates, and you see that reality right in front of you, it's harder to ignore that.
Exactly.
And you start
You have to
building
accept
in that information into the trial designs.
Yeah, and that's what we really want to see how the trials are designed. And you know how I always say that I feel like there's so many silos in our space. All the pharma companies are in their own silo, and even within their companies, there's silos. And then the advocacy groups are silos. It's like no one's working together. And I'm so open to being an alliance. I want to build the bridges. I want one big sandbox. We're all trying to cure cancer because. And what I see at SABCS happening is more people are talking to each other. And if you
Yes.
think about it, I understand corporate America. I understand, the concept of competition. But at the end of the day, when you have, how many thousands of pharma companies trying to cure the same thing, if they're not working together, they could work together and be more effective, right? So I think that this gives a platform for some of those sort of cross conversations. It's almost like my orchestra analogy. When you walk into
Yes.
the orchestra, all the music, all the instruments are warming up, and so the cellos are playing beautifully in their corner, and the violins are over here playing beautifully. But in the audience, it sounds like noise until the conductor comes in, silences everybody, and they all play beautiful music. Well, I want to play the music, and I think that
That's a great
SABCS
analogy.
can
That
be
is
the
great, yeah.
conductor. You know what I mean? Can be the
Wow.
conductor of this music.
And that's kind of what we're doing right now, right?
Yeah,
We
right.
have Touch, we have, Triple Negative
Yeah.
Breast Cancer Foundation, Cancer Fashionista, and we could have aired this, right, on just one of our platforms.
Right, but we're all together.
But instead, we're airing
We're in
it
the
on
sandbox.
3
I love it.
platforms,
We're making
working
music.
together, and on blackdoctor.org,
Wow.
trying to reach as many people as we can.
Yeah, and make the
So-
music.
So let me summarize, because what I think I hear you saying, and this is information that's great to take back to the organizers of this conference, is that you would like a session or sessions where you get to interface with researchers, with doctors, with surgeons, where advocates can maybe, I don't know if it's like a speed dating, a round table, maybe
Right.
it's a lunch, maybe a fireside chat, or something where you can sit and talk to some of the people who conduct these trials and maybe see where there can be some more synergy.
Right. How can
Wow.
they work? How can
Thanks.
they work together?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
and like if you think about the researcher at Genentech talking to the triple negative researcher at Gilead, or like, so are they talking? They're all working in the same space. How do we make those connections so that maybe there is a new drug and maybe they share the profits? I don't really know, but I mean,
Well, they can talk about the targets, right?
Right, they can talk
Because
about
the
the
drugs
targets.
might be different, but the targets
right.
are the same.
Right.
So each drug has something that it's treating or blocking or
Right.
highlighting
on
or
it,
knocking it down some way or another. And so that is something that they could begin to talk
Right, like a
about.
more unified approach.
But those
Right.
conversations need to happen. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, let me ask you this. Let me switch gears and say, what would entice you and your followers to come to a conference like San Antonio? What do you need to see and hear?
Well, I think I would love to see, where the research is going in terms of curing triple negative breast cancer. How close are we really? And like I, as a patient, would love to know what will that take? I don't even really know what that looks like, and what would it take to get there? And as a patient, how can we be part of that? Whether it's through clinical trials or, just looking at, our genetics or whatever that might look like. But I would love to really have a better understanding of how do we get to the end of this thing.
Yeah, when you see those posters in that huge room where there's hundreds of researchers, like, I want them to talk to each other.
Do
Like,
you
is there
feel hopeful
something-
or do you feel hopeless because it's so broad? Because my question to you is, what if they told you that we weren't that close?
But at
What
least
would
we know
do?
that. At
What
least
would
we
that
know
do?
that. That would say, okay, well, what are you doing and where are you?
Right.
What are you
And-
doing and where are you?
exactly.
And maybe you're
So
not
we need
that
a
close.
State of the Union.
Yeah.
kind of,
Right.
And then
or
my next
TNBC
question would
State
be,
of the Union.
okay,
Right.
God forbid, I don't want to put out there,
Right.
I have 2 daughters, if
Right.
they test positive for BRCA, and God forbid, so what are we looking at? If triple negative doesn't have a cure anytime soon, then where are we with treatment?
Right.
Are we still going to be losing our hair? Are we still going to be having to do really aggressive forms of chemotherapy
Right.
as the only targeted treatment?
Right.
Okay.
So it's like if
Now
we
that
can't,
answer is there.
Yeah.
That answer is starting to be there. There are
Yeah.
more targeted therapies for PDL1,
PDL1.
right? Keytruda and other
Keytruda
drugs.
and Trodelvy.
Yep,
We have
Keytruda
them.
and Trodelvy that are
Yeah.
starting to now become more targeted therapies, but it's not enough.
No,
It's one
and
target
you know,
from a
and
million.
people don't know about it. I heard a lot about Keytruda yesterday in the thing, and even people are talking about it. But I still have patients calling saying, I don't know what to do, or my doctor said to do TAC. And I'm like, well, have you heard about Keytruda? Have you heard about for early stage? Have you heard about Trodelvy? And they haven't. And so I'm hoping maybe some of the media support for the conference will kind of address some of these drug awareness issues, because doctors are still not aware of some of the
that's a really
therapies.
interesting point, because sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, yes, there are new treatments, but then it seems like when the patients speak to each other, because I know this from having like our Zoom virtual
Yeah.
meetings, where the patients are actually exchanging information, and they're like, well, my doctor didn't know about that.
Right.
And so
Yep.
there seems to be a disconnect, because I guess not every doctor is always going to be on the same page with all the new treatment, correct?
And
Right.
It's true, and it's every tumor, every stage, every cancer is different. Even TNBC, between one TNBC and another TNBC, can be totally molecularly.
Yeah, like is her TNBC different because she has
It
BRCA
is.
and mine,
And
I don't
the
have
answer is
BRCA.
yes, it is.
Is that
And
why
she'll
one
respond
person was
to-
offered something
Yep,
and
she'll
another
respond to
wasn't?
certain drugs that
Right,
you may not
right,
respond
right.
to, and we can know that information now. Let me ask you this question then, on the subject of clinical trials, right? Because what it takes to get more information, to make the discoveries, is we need the data, and the data comes from people. It comes from our cancers. It comes from our tumors. It comes from our bodies,
Yeah.
our breasts. And, is there have you seen, I guess, Haley, this is good for you and everybody, have you seen an emphasis for advocates for breasties on improving participation and understanding clinical trials? Is that an area where we can grow in this conference?
I mean, we can definitely grow in this conference when it comes to that. But I think that in terms of the advocacy world, I think a lot of advocates are really making an effort to talk
think
to their
so.
communities and to
Yes.
educate them about clinical trials, to
Agree.
dispel the myths about clinical trials, and to encourage participation and to show people the benefits of participating.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
for sure.
We hope so.
I-
We're on we're starting our movement on January 11th. It'll be on our January 12th show, and we're going to really try to use, I used to work at a Coke mantra, we want to be within arm's reach of every patient. We want to be within arm's reach where they live, work, play, and pray, and really reach out with all of our community partners to get this message across, to educate, and really, you really need to understand what a clinical trial is before you need one.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with our breastie choir of all our breastie friends to kind of educate them, and then reach out to young women. And we have this awesome HBCU internship program that we
So
partner
fantastic.
with the TNBC Foundation on. And we've had 15 girls this year, Haley, and they are just these amazing little brainiac badass women. But we're going to expand that next year so they can be the tentacles into educating not only their peers but also their family members to talk about.
That's amazing.
To talk about the science, because it's so important for us to understand. I think the one thing though that I hope that happens at SABCS is that still there's a lot of doctors with implicit bias, and I don't think it's intentional. You know what I mean? I think it's more, well, I have a black patient, but I think we have to still kind of break down those walls. And when you talked earlier, you alluded to health equity. I came up with a new definition for health equity this week. So my new definition for health equity came from you, because because one of the first things she tells me when she gets a new patient, the first thing she says to them is, "I'm going to treat you like family." Right? And so to me, that's what health equity is. It's unconditional access. It's unconditional access. It's when the doctor treats you like you want to be treated, or when the doctor treats you like the doctor would treat his or her mother, his or her daughter, his or her sister, right? That's what health equity is. It means that everybody is treated how you would treat your family.
Like that should be the standard.
That should be the standard. And until a doctor and I think doctors you walk in with your best intention that you want to heal a patient. But is it how you would treat your daughter? Is it how you would treat your mom? And that's what we need. So
what do we say then to patients who are still, and I don't think it's unique to the Black community, although it is, it's prevalent, very prevalent, ubiquitous even, meaning it's everywhere. In our community, there is a distrust and a distaste for potentially life-saving treatments like chemotherapy, for things like clinical trials, where there's this hunger and this craving for holistic and non-drug approaches to treatment of something that is really aggressive and that maybe needs a stronger approach. What do we say to those people who are watching to try to help them understand, I guess, that there can be...
That you're going to die.
Well, I say it this way, right? And the truth is, Melissa, you said it earlier, we all are at some point, right? Nobody makes it to whatever comes next.
Right.
If you believe anything comes next, nobody makes it without going through that threshold. Right. But helping them to understand that science doesn't necessarily debate or put down what you believe about what your body can do, or that you believe that food is medicine, right? Like, I want to see those types of talks that welcome that conversation.
Alternative things.
Yeah, and I would love to see the conference have a sort of a session, a poster session, some discussions,
like on integrated medicine
surrounding that.
Absolutely, because it's funny. It used to be such a new thing, and now it's becoming more mainstream. Reiki, acupuncture, and this is where we get into sort of funky waters, because I mean, it comes down to a personal opinion. I believe in science. There's data, when it comes to cancer, but I also enjoy folding in those modalities because they can complement the medicine,
or they can make you feel better, or they can help you deal with it. They can help you deal with the side effects. And so it may not cure the cancer the way a drug would, but it can make you be able to go to work today, or be able to feed your kids, or be able to
help you just get through it,
take the edge off. To go to your son's birthday party.
So not an alternative,
right?
I hate that term, alternative medicine, right?
No.
It's not an alternative.
It's an accompaniment.
It's if you drink green tea and do Reiki, it's not going to cure.
Right.
Sure. It's not. It shouldn't be one extreme or the other. That's my personal opinion.
Right. I agree. I had a patient who asked me today. Every day it seems, several times a day, I've got to make that call and tell somebody, you have a breast cancer. This is your stage. Here's the treatment. Here's where we are in terms of what you might need. And she asked me, after she listened to everything I said, she said, what do you think about the Budwig diet? And the Budwig diet, flaxseed, cottage cheese, honey. It's a diet that's supposed to help boost the immune system and anti-inflammatory, and help the body to starve the cancer, so to speak. And I told her, I said, and she said, and what about my other alternative therapies that I'm exploring? And I said, well, I don't call them alternative. I call them complements, right? Yeah. Like, if you believe that the body can heal itself through diet, then through diet and through medicine, the body can heal itself from the effects of things like chemotherapy.
Right.
Through the effects of things like radiation.
Right.
Your body can heal itself from the effects of a surgery.
Right.
Right? And so we can use all of the supplements, all the things that you're taking, the diet you want to eat, whatever else, your sea moss, your apple cider vinegar, cauliflower, whatever the next apple cider vinegar, cauliflower because there's always something new.
Right.
You know, but all those things can help your body to heal and recover faster, give you more energy, and then fight off cellular mistakes in the future. You don't have to pick.
Everything works together for good,
you don't
right?
have to choose.
But so many people feel like it's one or the other. They
I
feel like
know.
if they are, doing traditional medicine, then really they're rejecting alternative
Yeah.
modalities, and that's not true.
And I
No.
wonder,
It doesn't have
though,
to be that way.
about the scientists at the conference, though. And so this is
Right.
a good thing to
Right.
sort of pull the room. And
Right.
then you guys
Right.
in your advocacy groups have the ability to ask these questions. And
Right.
so I'm giving you some homework. And your homework is to go back to your partners and your docs and say, what would it look like if we had a session that
Right.
really started to talk a little bit more about this, because patients want to understand it better. And kind of gauge the room and see what it could look like, because we don't want there to be misinformation
Right.
and fear, and we don't want
Right.
doctors to just say no, don't do it, I don't believe in it, because they don't understand it, because they weren't trained in it, because they didn't learn about
They didn't
it.
learn it. They didn't learn it in
Right.
medical
They
school.
didn't learn it in medical school,
Right.
therefore
Right.
it must not
Right.
exist.
Right.
And that's not necessarily
That's
the
not necessarily
case.
true.
But we want
Yeah.
this conference to be about what's going to improve the overall health and wellness of our breast cancer patients overall.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
lifestyle, right? That's
Absolutely, quality of life,
Quality
so that
of
you
life.
can
Life.
you can go through treatment and take the bullet, if you will, of the treatment that you need, but still be able to function and enjoy your life in the meantime.
Sure. Yeah. And then give you something to feel empowered about after treatment, because then, talk about after treatment is done. Right? Like, what do you do with your life and with yourself? You guys turned your lemons into limoncello. I'm not even calling it lemonade. You turned your lemons into limoncello, and here we are. But, like, what does the average person do who's, like, watching this, and now they're not seeing their doctors as much anymore, and they don't know whether to be glad or be anxious about it?
We get so many questions about, what Val calls survivorship. What does that look like? And, should you eat differently? Should you change your diet? Should you stop eating sugar? Should you stop eating red meat? And I don't think anyone really knows what the answer is. I mean, you know what to eat. You know you're not supposed to eat fried chicken and mac and cheese and, mashed potatoes with gravy every day. We all want to eat the good stuff, and I eat ice cream every day. We know that. But I don't,
Ice cream's dairy, so you're good. You're getting your
Okay,
calcium.
okay, yeah, I'm getting my calcium. But
Or alcohol. We should talk about
yeah,
that
okay,
too.
we have some
Yeah.
wine, right? But I think that we don't really know, because everybody's different. But you know what makes your body work, and I think you get, by the time you're somewhat mature, you sort of know that, this is how what's going to make your
You'd be
feel good.
surprised. People don't.
I guess, okay,
They
maybe they
don't.
don't.
The number 3 question that patients ask me, they want to know, am I going to die? Do I need chemo? Number 3 question is, what should I be eating? What should I be eating so that I
Or
can
what should I
live?
not be eating?
Or what should I not be eating? What should my diet be like? And then I kind of tell them, and we go over it, and they're like, okay. And you say, an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-cancer diet. And I'm like, blank stare.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
It's like, am I eating kale and chia seeds and water?
Right.
And that's
Black
exactly what they
seeds,
think. They think it's alfalfa sprouts for breakfast,
black
lunch, and
seeds,
dinner.
right.
And so I think we got a lot of work to do to sort of
Help
translate
people.
that sort
Because
of
you know what,
healthy-
there's so much information out there, so I think it's a matter of like making
Filtering.
it really easy to digest and making sense out of it, so that people don't think it's just one thing or the other. Because
Yeah.
look, I eat. I've gone to more of a plant-based diet simply because, from what I understand, that there are more carcinogens in meat. But do I have a steak once in a while? Yes. So I think also you especially if you've survived breast cancer, you want to be able to enjoy yourself and enjoy life. So
It's true.
It's a balance.
Yeah, I think
But
you're
then
right.
you think about, our friend Juliette is here with us, and she's metastatic. Like, what should she be doing differently to accompany her chemo to make her feel good, to make her survive through a rough day, to help her,
So it sounds like there could be more sessions on nutrition and maybe education.
on life,
there
on life.
as well.
Right.
Now, let me tell you what you will find this week at San Antonio. You are going to find the latest data on trials that we've been watching, like the RxPonder trial, for example. RxPonder is looking at anti-estrogen therapy and looking at an oncotype score, the risk of recurrence, how likely is cancer to come back, and would a person benefit from chemotherapy if they're estrogen receptor positive. You're going to see a ton of data on triple negative disease
Yes.
and the new targets. And then I saw a really great, interesting one on why does cancer evade the new drugs? What happens to the targets for Keytruda and Trodelvy? Why does the cancer mutate and how? We don't quite understand, but we're starting to figure out, it's sort of like dating almost, like you're hanging around and you're starting to get to know and you're like reporting back and you're getting some information about it, but we still, we don't know. It's just the personality is a little schizophrenic, I'll say.
Still boggles
cancer
my
personality
mind.
it boggles the mind. But I guess for people who are watching, tell them why you think this conference and the rest of this week is really important for them to tune into, because we didn't get into a lot of the science and research here today, but every single day there's like breaking abstracts and new data, and you guys are going to be talking to experts all week long.
We are.
So why should a person who doesn't really, understand cancer science, why should they listen in?
Because you always want to know what's your plan B. Whatever your plan A is, whatever you're doing now, if things stop working, or
especially if you're metastatic.
Exactly. If you're metastatic, what are you going to take next?
Right.
And I think that's what's so great about our three organizations teaming up together. Ricky, Melissa, and I, all three of us are going to be interviewing experts, in this area. We're doing it later in the week. So as you know, TNBC, the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium, every day new data is presented.
Right.
But a lot of the, the major announcements are at the latter part of the week, right? So we are going to be interviewing people on Friday. We have a special session of The Doctor Is In that's going to air on Sunday with Dr. Melinda Talley of Stanford.
Right.
So we're going to really be able to bring to all of our audience,
all the information,
the newest information.
Yeah, and we actually are blogging every day. Emily's writing a blog every day, and so we have a special microsite that we put on the TNBC Foundation website. So
if you go to the homepage of tnbcfoundation.org, you will see an icon that says Your Guide to SABCS. And if you click on that, you will be able to find our blogs. You'll be able to find all the interviews that we're doing, and so much great content to help you understand.
We're not going to talk about the line dancing. It's okay. We may do another dance video.
Melissa, why should your followers follow San Antonio? Why should they think about going next year?
I think it's an incredible way to learn firsthand what new advances are being made towards finding a cure, towards new trials, towards new ways to target this disease. And I think more than ever, it's just so important for us as patients to really, be our own advocates, and maybe even share things with our doctors that maybe they haven't, looked at yet.
Wow.
Because there's just so much information out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Do you think that you could get a group of folks together to talk about things they wish their doctors knew about them, right?
I think I could. Absolutely.
We always do the things you wish your doctor had told you, right?
Absolutely.
Or things we interview, we stump the chump, we talk to the doctors. But wouldn't it be great to have a things I wish my doctor knew about me?
I love that.
Session.
I've never heard
Absolutely.
anyone
Right?
suggest that, and
So
it's
let's
so
do that.
true.
Let's do that.
I love that.
Let's do
I
that.
love that idea.
Yeah, we're actually trying to put together a focus group of doctors, and just to
Yes, we are.
So we're going to try to convene that soon, and but that's a great discussion to have.
That really is.
What do you really want to know about your patients? I mean, even Juliet we were talking earlier today about how, her doctor is really busy, and so she spends 3 minutes. Is your chemo okay? Here's your chemo. Here's your script. See you bye.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you take as much time as you can, but still, in most situations, even the research that we did shows that most patients feel rushed by their doctors, especially when they have conversations about clinical trials, about research, about therapies. They feel rushed and they walk out of the office and, wait a minute, like, what did they just say? Because, unless somebody's there helping them take notes or whatever. And then even in the clinical trial conversation, they'll go home and say, I'm going to do a clinical trial. And their family will be like, are you crazy? Why are you doing that? What's the and start asking them questions.
Yeah.
And they don't feel equipped to be able to answer the questions, and they shy away from it.
Wow.
So we have to do education there. But again, that's telling the doctors how to or you like, how do you talk to your patients about this? And that's part of our advocacy, you know.
And another big part, I think, is self-advocacy and
Yes,
trying to
asking
teach
for the trial.
patients, empowering them
Yeah.
to walk into an intimidating situation, right? A lot of people are intimidated at the doctor's office, and they walk out not having had their questions answered.
No.
You know, and oncology nurses, I think, play a big part.
Right, they
Right,
do.
in treatment too, and
navigators.
navigators. So they need to be part of the conversation, I think, as well, because so many people who don't feel comfortable talking to their doctors do feel comfortable with their nurses.
Right.
The nurses are the ones that are
Oh,
giving
yeah.
them their
And
cell
sometimes
phone
you end up
number.
spending more
We
time with
spend
your
Yes.
way more
Oh,
time.
That's
yeah.
the one who
with
answers
your-
the phone
yeah.
call in the middle of the night when you're like, why do I have a rash? And
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I still, you know, talk to my chemo nurse 10 years later. I talk to her.
Wow.
Yeah.
I call her every
Wow.
nurse's day and I make her a pound cake.
Oh my
That's so
gosh.
great.
My Cheryl, she was so awesome to me, but that's who you get to know. And
But
then
that
Oh,
shows
yeah.
how
Cool.
important they
It
are,
is.
and
I
I feel
know,
like
yeah.
maybe they need to be brought into the mix as well, because I don't see them at
At
SABCS.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
know.
Yeah,
I
and they're
know.
such a huge part
Yeah,
of
I mean-
our
of treatment.
Of our treatment. I
treatment.
remember when my doctor told me, okay, Ricky, you're now metastatic. You have to start chemo again. I went to the chemo and I'm like, well, what does that really mean? Like, does that mean I'm going to die? Like, she didn't, you know, I was with her for the next 4 hours. So she broke everything down to me. Well, here's what you're up against. Here are the risks. This is what we're doing. Da, da, da. After like spending, you know, 5 minutes with my doctor saying, go back on chemo. So,
Now, there are conferences that focus on the nursing, the navigation, and how a cancer program can be more integrated. So NCBC, for example, the National Consortium of Breast Centers, is always in Vegas every year. But that one has more to do with the inner workings of how a person goes from their imaging to their biopsy to their surgery to their radiation to into survivorship. And it's not so much on the research, although there are posters and there is research that's presented. San Antonio tends to be very, very research heavy, but a certain type of research, bench, molecular, clinical trials. Like this is the heavy hitting stuff. But it's wonderful, I think, to see when there's a patient advocate, you know, on that big screen, right? When there's a survivor and a thriver, you know, on that big screen that says, hey, I was a part of XYZ trial, and here's how I'm doing, and here's how I felt.
and it goes full
know?
circle.
It
Right.
goes
Yep.
full circle.
Right.
Or having something in tandem that, you know, really helps to translate a lot of this actually at the meeting. And so what I'm excited about is that, you know, next year when we go to this meeting, I want to serve as a translator. Yeah, I want to do the
Yes.
scientific stuff, but I don't mind being the person who says, okay, so it's like that Key and Peele. You know, you ever
Yeah.
see the episode
Yeah.
where
Yes.
the person,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
politician
Yeah,
says
yeah.
one thing and then the person says, well, what he really means is this.
Right.
You know,
Talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Right?
So,
Right.
so like being a translator and then
Right.
training other
Yeah.
advocates and other survivors to be translators, because that's the strength of what you guys do, is that you're going to take this knowledge from this entire week and you're going to package it up and say to your followers and to say to your teams and your groups, listen, here's this conference and it's all research heavy, but we broke it down for you.
And here's what's going to help
Here's
you.
the stuff on chemo.
Right.
Here's the stuff on radiation. Here's the stuff on quality of life.
Right.
Here's the things that you need to know. The stuff on quality of life.
Right.
Here's the things that you need to know. And this is the latest. This is we're up to date. This is what we got. We don't have
Right.
a cure yet, but here's where we are.
Or here are the trials that we should be
Here are
following.
the trials.
Let's think about how we can
Right.
recruit more people into
Here's
these
what
trials.
you should ask your doctor about when
Exactly.
you go and you know
This
you
is
get
ready for prime
diagnosed.
time, but
Right.
this is not. This is a
Right.
few years
Yes.
away, but we'll watch it for you.
Right.
Exactly
Right.
right. I think you're going to have a really great a story and a toolbox at the end of this to help patients, because when you get that diagnosis, you know you're sitting there like this and you're like, all you heard was blah 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 cancer.
Right. Wah,
And,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
and your family's just like, okay, so when is surgery? Do I need to take off from work? And what about the kids? And let me figure out the vacations. And Christmas is coming. And all the, you know, like all these things. Like your mind isn't thinking, okay, should I be part of a clinical trial? And what research? And how do I navigate this? But we can give
Yeah,
patients,
research is really the last thing on your mind.
but
when
we
you're
can
sick.
Oh,
give patients
absolutely.
questions to ask about research,
Yeah.
right? Like we
Yeah.
can give them, just like we give them a guide about
Right.
your cancer,
Right.
understanding
Right.
what TNBC means, right? Here's how to ask your doctor about research.
Right.
Here's maybe a couple key questions that you can ask your doctor about trials. You know, here's how to have that second opinion conversation, because the first opinion, you're just figuring out your head from you know what.
Right.
But the second opinion, you're like, okay, I understand now what this means, but tell me what this means for my life.
Right, for my life.
Right.
And
yeah.
one of the great things we have on the TNBC Foundation website is a clinical trial access point to search for trials.
Matching service.
Matching
we
service,
actually
yeah.
have
I
two.
love that.
We have one for all triple negative cases,
Oh, wow.
and then we have one specific to metastatic
So
disease.
wait, break this down for me like I'm a 5-year-old. You're saying that for newly diagnosed triple negative breast cancer patients, they can go to your website, tnbcfoundation.org,
Yes,
and they can find
they can find clinical trial matching services that are free to
Wow.
use.
Wow.
Obviously, you can go to clinicaltrials.gov,
But that's
it
like
is
going to hell blindfolded with your
so-
Can
phenotype.
doctors go to that site too? Because I know a
Absolutely.
lot
Yeah.
of doctors
Yeah.
who shy away from
Absolutely.
the clinical
Yeah,
trial site.
clinicaltrials.gov is horrible.
Right? It's,
It's-
like going to the Matrix,
it's
right?
so
you
complicated.
don't want to go to Oz.
Yes.
It's like going to Emerald City.
It
but
is.
they can go to
Yeah, and find
tnbcfoundation.org.
specific for TNBC.
So
just for
doctors can too.
TNBC. Doctors can,
Ooh.
absolutely. A lot of people go on, find trials, and then bring them to their doctors to show
Wow.
them.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And then we realized that, it could be even more useful if we had a separate one just for metastatic disease, and we
Yeah.
have that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there resources to help patients and advocates get to the conference? Because that, funds is it's a rate limiting step, right? So if somebody's watching and they kind of want to go, how can they begin to network about that?
Well, there are some advocacy programs. I'm not sure
Yes,
exactly,
that
and I think that send patients, and I think some of the pharma companies actually send
I think so
patient
too,
advocates
yes.
also.
Yes.
But there's like advocacy group that sends a bunch of advocates, and they all kind of can get
Is it
together.
Alamo?
I think it is
it's-
Alamo.
I
Yeah,
think it's
We'll
Alamo.
figure that
Okay.
and put that in the
We'll
chat.
put it in the chat.
But there is one organization, because that's how I met Kiara,
Yes.
right,
yes.
a few years ago.
I think that was Alamo.
Yeah, and so they will send, and I think you can fill out an application to figure out, give you a reason why you should go. So there is some of that, and then even for us, we were going to take 3 people with us. Just say if you want to go, like call us, and we'll try to figure out how we can take a few people
Sure.
and just bunk in our rooms with us because we're going to be there, and we'd
But
love to
until
take
that
some people.
happens,
Yeah.
we're trying to do this virtually and
Right,
really
and we'll
bring
always
all
do that. I think
yes.
going forward,
Every
we'll
year.
we'll
Just
do
to
it every
somehow
year,
to,
even
to
if
bring it to those
to
who
bring it to
either,
those who
you know,
can't
some of us
travel.
are not even well enough
To
even-
travel.
Yeah.
It's
travel,
True. It's
yeah.
true, and take
So-
time away from their families.
Yeah.
So doing it virtually, I think, is a beautiful way,
Yeah.
and I think COVID has done at least
Yeah.
one service to all of us and
Yes.
connected us in that way. The sessions are recorded; you can go back and watch them, and I think it really does help. My hope would be to see more community education and training of survivors and advocates and navigators, right? To go out and combat misinformation about
Yeah.
clinical trials, to be able to explain the science to people in a way they can understand. Maybe even a session or 2 to teach doctors on how to explain things to people, because we unlearn all of our language skills. In medical school, completely, you have to unlearn it. You have to learn a new language. And then being
Yeah.
able to go back and
Yeah.
take the language and deconstruct it and explain it to people in ways they can understand.
Right.
It's not a skill that every doctor has. But imagine if scientists and physicians went to this conference and maybe just went to a little, networking session or a little workshop or
Right.
something on just this.
Right.
How to sit and spend an hour and talk to people.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that would be time well spent, and that would be information that they can then take back to their communities and their universities. So
It'd be life changing for patients.
It would.
It really
It would be.
yeah, and then the focus on clinical trials. We're presenting all this clinical trial data,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do we convince people to participate?
And that's really, to me, my hope is that next year we see a lot more Black people and people of color and TNBC people in research.
Yeah.
That we see.
Because they're out there. We are there.
We're
You're
here.
doing it.
We're doing it, and so I want to
Yeah.
see more people, participating in the research and feeling comfortable with it.
Wow.
And
And I just want patients to know that they're not alone. Because
Yeah.
you get this
Yeah.
No one
horrible
fights
disease.
alone.
That's our tagline. That's
it's
our
right.
foundation
Like that,
tagline.
yeah,
It's
no
so
one fights
true.
alone.
And being at this conference can be completely overwhelming, but it also shows you the depth and the breadth and the vastness of people who are all working with you and for you, and
Yeah.
people who have been through what you've been through, or their mothers,
Right.
or their sisters, or their husbands, or like it affects men too. And I think having more sessions for men,
Right.
I think is going to be an important thing on the horizon. But just seeing that there's an entire, as we say, ecosystem that's
There
working
is.
with you and on your behalf,
Yeah.
should hopefully make you feel comforted and empowered, because you're not going through this thing alone.
You're not. And there's a lot of, and that's the hope, is when you see all the science happening, there's got to be a breakthrough. There's got to
Yes.
be something, as you said earlier, you're hoping that this is going to be the conference where, you know, the cure comes or something comes dynamic
Some
that's going to
incredible new treatment.
that saves lives. And that's how we got Keytruda and Trodelvy.
Yes.
You know, and
There was a world once without Herceptin, right?
There was, exactly,
and,
exactly.
And, you
Before
know,
we knew what BRCA genes were,
Right.
right? Before
Yep.
we knew what BRCA1 and 2
Right,
was,
right,
you know?
right.
And now there's so much information and research. Imagine if there were sessions designed to help educate and talk. How do you talk to your kids about this? And what do you do for your research moving forward? And what about other cancers you might be at risk
Right.
for? And let's start figuring out a cure for those before they happen.
right,
Exactly.
You know?
right.
Yeah.
I do. Before we end today, I want to give a shout out to the VP Kamala Harris's mom.
Oh, yes.
Yesterday was her birthday,
oh, wow.
and you know she was a breast cancer researcher, and she actually contributed to identifying progesterone
Mm-hmm.
as
The
a
progesterone receptor.
and so she did a huge breakthrough. So
Yeah.
so we celebrate
We owe
her.
her a debt of gratitude.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
thank you for that research because
Yeah.
it is helping to change and save lives and characterize breast cancer. Absolutely.
Yeah. Before
Yeah.
SABCS even happened, and so what's coming up? We're going to be doing interviews all week. You can check it out on the website, on our microsite.
Absolutely. I will be interviewing Dr. George Sledge. You're interviewing Dr. Melissa Davis.
Melissa Davis,
Wow.
yep, right. And
Yes.
then we're all interviewing Dr. Melinda Tully.
Dr. Melinda
And
Tully.
so we'll have
exactly.
another episode on Sunday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time with that interview.
That's great.
And we're putting stuff up on the microsite every day. Emily's blogging every day. We'll post the blogs on all of our social media. So watch all of our social media, you know, at Touch BBCA, at Cancer Fashionista, at TNBC Foundation. And
It's not just science, though. There's some fun stuff going
Oh,
on,
yeah,
too.
we got some fun stuff.
I've heard some recipes being thrown around for some mocktails.
We have
Right.
some
Yeah,
healthy
there's
and happy hour.
Somebody said something
Right.
about hummus. What else
Right.
is good?
I'm really excited to announce it on Thursday evening at 6:30 Eastern Time. That would be 3:30 Pacific Time. Chemo brain kicks in when I do the time zones.
Right, I
That's so
got you,
funny.
girl.
It's the
Same
weirdest thing.
I got the same thing.
But Rachel Beller of Beller Nutrition is going to be.
Yeah.
Love her.
Yeah.
She's been on Dr. Oz and The Biggest Loser, and she's a huge advocate of nutrition and breast cancer. So she shared a recipe for hummus and also a pomegranate mocktail mojito that you can find by going to tnbc.org to the Healthy Happy Hour page. You can register for the event there, download the recipe. Is today Wednesday already?
It's
Oh my
Wednesday.
God.
Wednesday.
So it's
So
tomorrow
tomorrow.
night. So you guys have to
Yeah.
run to Whole
Yeah.
Foods tonight or to the supermarket to get, it's not a ton of ingredients, but you need a few things. And we're going to be kicking off with some nutrition info, a little Rachel Beller love, and then we're just going to chat, which is really nice.
I
We're
love
gonna
it.
have
I
just
love it.
connect again with our
Yeah.
communities, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a great Zoom.
Yeah, so we have
Yes.
stuff going on all week, so just check it out. I'm sure we're forgetting something and
There's so much on
so much
there.
stuff to do. Yeah, so and we'll be back here on
On Sunday.
on Sunday, 3 o'clock to
Wow.
have the interview with Dr. Melinda Tully.
Yep, and if you guys miss anything, register for as many things as you'd like to, but you can always go to tnbc.org to the SABCS TV. It's like our little
Our private
library,
TV,
if
yeah.
you will, of
Yep.
anything that
I
we've
love
recorded
this.
is going to go there, so it will be there forever. You can see it whenever you'd like,
Wow.
at your leisure.
Even if you missed an Instagram live, that's going to be there too.
Great.
All of
Everything.
Melissa's Instagrams.
And Melissa, why don't you tee up our next show next Wednesday?
Ooh, well, thank you. I'm really excited because next Wednesday I am going to be joining Ricky and Dr. Mo with Lolita Frazier of Strut Talk, and we are going to be talking about strutting your way through breast cancer and how important posture is to bone health. And I'm going to leave it there because it's going to be really awesome.
But we're
Oh,
going
I
to
love
strut.
that.
We're gonna
We're
strut.
strut.
Oh my gosh,
So
that
get
just
your-
made me sit up taller.
I
Yeah,
know,
get
me
ready.
too. I sure did.
Get your stilettos.
Oh,
we have those
okay.
pink ones.
I have my Sarah Flint.
Your Sarah Flint pink
Yes.
stilettos. We got these great stilettos.
Yep, I'm
We'll have
gonna
to buy
walk
you a
around in
pair,
them.
Melissa.
I can't wait.
And
So
and,
here's the deal. You know, we know that cancer is devastating. The
Yes.
diagnosis, the treatment, the impact on your entire life, your family, your finances, everything. But we're here to try to bring
Yeah.
some support, some light, some hope,
Some
some
comfort.
laughs, some comfort, some research, and
Some hugs.
some hugs, even from the miles, virtually,
Yeah.
even from all the way from San Antonio, where we are, but not.
Not.
And
We're in a better place.
and these are some great places for information
Yeah.
for you. So if you or your family members or your loved ones, or if you're in your cancer programs, you know people who need resources, and you want to get good, solid information and not just hearsay, not misinformation, you can go to these websites, touchbbca.org. You can go to Triple Negative Foundation, tnbcfoundation.org. You can go to the Cancer Fashionistas website, which is
cancerfashionista.com.
cancerfashionista.com, and find not only research and information about treatment, but about lifestyle, about ways to live your best life with cancer. And you can always follow us here every Wednesday night and some Sundays now on blackdoctor.org, doing the Doctors In, bringing you every single detail and iota of anything about breast cancer care, life, research, clinical trials. And we hope this has been relatable and reliable and real.
Right.
It's what we set out to do every single Wednesday night.
Yeah.
I know. We got to put another quarter.
I think they're giving us a
Another
hint.
quarter
Last
down
call.
here. So here we are. We're at last call. We're going to go have our cider, and we're going to enjoy our girls' night. We hope that you have enjoyed it. We want to take your questions and comments. We will be hanging out in the chats.
Yeah.
And here we are, the Doctors In.
Breasty love.
Breasty love to each
Breasty
and every
love.
one of you.
See you Sunday and next week.
Check out